So we will now transition to a fireside chat panel focusing on sharing forest sector DE&I successes. Representatives from different areas of the forest sector will share their experiences with DE&I and the successes they have seen within their organizations. After we've heard from each speaker, we will open the floor up for questions. And so I am going to turn it over to our final speaker for this session, Ms. Kathy Abusow. And Kathy is the president and CEO of Sustainable Forestry Initiative. Kathy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Well, listen, what a morning. Really, thanks for having me here today. I was listening to Melody's work and I found myself holding back the tears. And I thought, you know, I'm not a woman that cries a lot at work, but man, why is it that every time I'm on a DEI call, I'm holding back the tears or I'm full out crying, whether it's on a board meeting or it's somewhere else. And I think it's just really important for us to reflect on the power of individual story, but the reality of individual stories as well. And, you know, there's so much work to be done. And as a CEO that cares about this a lot, I want to have a big impact. As an organization, like SFI has a huge reach in terms of state agencies, in terms of state education networks, in terms of certified organizations, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of potential employers. But I also worry, I worry as we move forward that have we done the groundwork? Have we laid the foundation so that as we bring more and more people from diverse backgrounds into the sector, that it's a warm and welcoming place. And hearing Melody's story just reminds me so much that this isn't just about recruitment, it's about retention. And how do you have retention? It's about systemic change. And it's not just the HR folks knowing. It's not just the HR folks showing up for training. It's having everyone that is interfacing with everyone, because this is the world that we're living with, being trained, being aware of history, being aware of what's going on, and committed to building a better future. And if we're trying to create an inclusive world, I think we just need to send a signal as leaders. So I want to thank Rocco Saracena for joining me. He's our senior manager of the PLT network. He also serves on SFI's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group, and he's also on the leadership team of the SAF Diversity and Inclusion Working Group as well, and certainly is really embedded in all of our programs. I just have 5 slides to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing as an organization. And I really appreciated actually CJ's comments on the words inclusion. And he was talking about expansion, and we've really struggled ourselves with that term inclusion, just generally speaking. And I like the way he framed it. We still use the word inclusion, but we've really decided to spell out what we mean by that. So there's sort of 2 documents that we have. They're on our website right under About SFI. They're right there at the top. And one is our staff culture document, where we are asking of staff, and staff create this document together every year. We live it every day. We say this is what we try to live on our best day. We hope that every day is our best day, but this is how we want to show up all the time. And so this is a document that is really to guide us, and it's created by staff for our staff. And then it's revisited annually at our staff retreat. But our performance, how we do our work, is evaluated as well, not just what we do, but how we do it. And the embodiment of the staff culture is also part of our performance planning. And one item of our staff culture is to embody diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of your work. And it's of your work, it's of our work, it's shared work, it's a teamwork. But we thought it was important on that inclusion point for us right at the top of that document, which is the text on the right of the screen, to say, we believe that what that means for us. So we believe that our organization is strengthened by our employees who represent diverse cultures, disciplines, educational backgrounds, and work and life experiences. We are committed to creating a professional, inclusive, empowered, and supportive team which guides both our internal policies and procedures as well as our external programming. And so for us, it definitely is not assimilation. It is definitely inclusion is inclusion of everyone and all of their diverse perspectives and what they bring to the table. But I do believe, CJ, you're right. So often inclusion is sort of sort of looked through a lens of assimilation. So I think it's really an important point to highlight as we work through this and checking ourselves in terms of what are our expectations there. And we've had all sorts of great conversations about, certainly I don't want inclusion to be a homogeneity. I want inclusion to celebrate differences, to bring knowledge and awareness to different histories, cultures, races, and us to be able to learn from that and build a better future together. And so we had a big conversation, like just little examples, Christmas cards. Someone said, well, it should be holiday cards. And I was like, yeah, well, you're right. Not everyone celebrates Christmas, but does holiday make it just generic for everyone? Why can't we celebrate everyone's occasions and put policies together to enable us to celebrate all occasions for everyone and ensure that even our HR days and our personal days enable people to have flexibility in celebrating what's important to them. So again, I think us being able to celebrate the differences in staff and bring them forward sort of brings forward that storytelling, whether it's positive, sad, negative, happy, or just plain old learning. I think that's really, really important. And so the staff culture is super important for us. And I interview everyone. It doesn't matter if it's an intern, and interns I think are really important because a lot of interns have come into employees and have really grown in our organization. Rocco being one example of that. He was an intern. So I interview everyone after the teams have gone through that interview, and I'm only interviewing for one thing, and that's staff culture, and that's it. And things change as a result of that as well. And I also want to see the diversity of the candidates. I want to see how do we get to these people and really have an analysis of that. And I think that's important as well as we move forward. We also have a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, and this was hard. It was really, really, really hard work. If you're thoughtful about these themes and have lots of conversations, you know that it's just not a policy and then you're done. It's just, you just constantly have to be revisiting and reflecting. And we brought it to the board for approval and board buy-in. And I think that's important as well, that it's not just the CEO and the leadership team that believes in these things, and then it's embedded in people's work plans, but that you've got that board approval as well, which we achieved. And so when we developed our DEI policy, it did spur on a great conversation at our board about work plan and our strategy documents. And because our mission is to advance sustainability through forest-focused collaboration, and sustainability includes obviously social, economic, and environmental needs. So often in this sector, I say to folks, hey, the S doesn't stand for safety. The S stands for social. And we really need to be looking at that social perspective as well. And so it was really, I think, excellent that the board has acknowledged that if we're wanting to advance sustainability, it is our mission. It is all of our jobs to advance social issues, advance social equity, advance the social justice issues as well. And so it spurred on a great conversation about us relooking and using this DEI policy to rework our entire work plan and our strategy and look at the entire thing through a lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and to come forward with recommendations for how we can do better in this space and reach more audiences, be accessible, diverse, and inclusive in our work. And most recently, we're going down the path of developing DEI metrics for all aspects of our work that we can be tracking and then see progress against. All of this has brought us to the real realization that even though this is organizational wide, it's staff wide, it's board wide, and the potential is huge to be a role model for a network that we service, we can't do this alone without real expertise. And so it was a several-month process to develop just the job description for a Chief Sustainability and Diversity Officer, which we just announced that we're looking for last week. And I had a lot of great interviews in preparing that with Black American leaders, Indigenous leaders, and others to be thoughtful about how that was structured. And so, and what's really important for folks as well, I think, is a learning, is a takeaway that we had, and what I had through those conversations and developing that job description. This isn't one person's job, obviously, but this is a leader that can help us all sort of implement this change and look at it structurally, systemically, and not just as a veneer. And so I think it can happen where sometimes people think, oh, that's that person's job, oh, that's HR's jobs, or that's the diversity lead's job. But no, this is organizational wide, but we need help organization wide to bring about the change. And so I think that's really some of our learnings through this process and how we're going forward on it. Programmatically, I think to Craig's point earlier is Project Learning Tree, we took on under our wing at the end of 2017. And Project Learning Tree really is advancing environmental literacy and stewardship and education. And we've decided to add to that and link it to career pathways. And Project Learning Tree does have a presence in all states. And in Canada, we did receive significant funding to enable us to get very, very serious about the pipeline and it's supporting youth-facing barriers to getting employment in the forest sector. And why I share this information here is to really say, lots of times people say, well, hopefully, in 10 years and 20 years, it'll get better and we'll have the foundation and then we can start seeing change. The point is that we just started the organization focusing on this in 2018. And just in a few short years, we've had real and concrete successes. And sometimes people don't invest in this because they think it takes so long. Yes, it's a long-term proposition, diversity, equity, inclusion in the forest sector, and there's loads of work to do. But there certainly can be successes quickly with focus and intention. And so our focus and intention was to support youth-facing barriers, achieve employment in the forest sector. And so in the few short years, we placed 3,700 youth in green jobs, and this was a Canadian experience. But we are very keen to be, and have started to replicate this in the US as well. We said in the Canadian context, we wanted to see gender balance, and we achieved that. In fact, we employed more young women than we did young men. And in the Canadian context, Indigenous relations was very important. And it's important everywhere, but I'm just saying this was an important focal point of our work, was to really focus in on programming for Indigenous young adults. And so we achieved 580 of those youth that were placed in these green jobs were Indigenous youth. And when you consider that less than 5% of the population, unfortunately, is Indigenous, and that's for the entire lifespan, and we're working with 15 to 30-year-olds, those metrics are good. We also looked at satisfaction by the employee, those 3,700 young adults, and by the employer. And the rates and the satisfaction levels are over 90% for all. And I attribute that to what scares me most all the time, which is training. It scares me if we don't have the training in place. And so we have done extensive training with employers who are bringing on these youth and the people that will be working with these young adults, and then extensive training with the young adults that are going to be going into the workforce on what are the expectations of this sector, how and how to be curious, how to ask questions, how to also talk about your needs and get those across as well. And so I think that the training component is really an important part of the success. One thing that we found, though, is when we were working with the Indigenous young adults, that they said they don't have a lot of role models necessarily in their community that are in the forest sector working, and that they would like to have more role models, and they would like to see mentorship programs as well. So we developed Indigenous dedicated mentorship programs, and we also developed this Voices of Indigenous Peoples Guide to Green Jobs in the Forest Sector. And what it essentially did was featured a wide variety of Indigenous peoples in the forest sector, and forest and conservation and forestry and manufacturing and carbon modeling and parks, just across the sector, and education, and how they got there. What was that career path, and what was that experience path, but what was their life history, their life story, their two-eyed seeing that sort of led them to their place. And so I think these stories are really, really important, and they do something extremely important, which is help young Indigenous adults that look at this to understand there is no one single path, that you can start anywhere, and that there are opportunities in the sector. And but here's some models that were out there that you may want to consider. So shifting to the US, we really wanted to expand on and try to make a difference in the space of Black Americans' journeys into the forest sector. And so I'm so pleased Mia is on the phone with me today that sorry, on the moderating the session today, that Manners and SFI have an MOU to really work together in this space of advancing Black Americans in forest sector careers. And as part of that, we're working with an all Black American advisory committee, and the names of the folks are here, that are helping us pull together exactly that, a journeys guide, doing similar things as we were doing with the Indigenous guide, but putting it in the Black American context, to feature different career pathways and journeys that different folks have taken and where they've landed. And we're really in the middle of this experience right now. And what we're hearing as well is employer training. Who are the audiences? The audience is not just the young adults that you're trying to get into this career, but really, as we heard earlier today when we kicked off our conversation, and we heard from Melody Mobley, it's training for employers as well. And so this guide will be different than the Indigenous guide in that we are really going to focus on some of the challenges that they faced, and then tips for employers as well to create a welcoming space and hopefully engage more employers in this journey, so that they're equipped to bring on Black American youth in the workforce in a welcoming way. So this is just a small, really a small, I'm trying to end my screen here now, if I could. Thought it was up to me to do that. There we go. So this is just a small way that we're trying to engage, but we do see it as starting with forest literacy from K to 8, and Project Learning Tree has tools for that, which includes climate literacy and fire literacy. Then going into skills development, where we're working with young adults and other partners to train them in skills. Then we're going into mentorship programs, which we've been running now for a few years, and on career pathways and engagement. And then finally, the job experiences. But no one organization can do this alone. I think we've heard quite a bit today already about the need for partnership. And certainly our mission is based on the word collaboration, advancing sustainability through forest-focused collaboration. So really excited that we've got this opportunity with this group to just be talking about these things, because I think there's all sorts of room for partnership. And I do want to thank Terry Baker as well, who really saw that partnership opportunity with our first Green Jobs Guide that we created in the US for all young adults, and for partnering with us on that, and really thinking through this work in a thoughtful way, and also the USDA for also partnering and funding some of our work in this space as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy.